From the National Information Assurance Partnership Office. Glad to be here. I haven't been back in the islands since '93. I was here last time still in uniform working on Hickam Air Force Base. And it's great to be back. My wife is with me and she's enjoying every minute of it. Of course, she's enjoying it more than I am, but yeah, we're both enjoying it. One thing that hasn't changed here is the weather and the aloha spirit. But man, there's a lot of stuff too. A lot of things have changed physically. And can't wait to start discovering. Okay, so this session is going to be, for some of you, show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Naiop? Okay, that's good. So I kind of tailored this to address all audiences, right? So I'm going to give you a brief history of Naiop, what we do, why we do it, and how that might affect you whether you're from industry or you're a user. All right, so we'll talk about that. Let me see, right side. So NIAP is the National Information Assurance Partnership. It was a partnership that was stood up back in the late 90s between NIST and NSA. It coincided with the development of what they call an international standard 17025, the Common Criteria. So NIAP and NIST teamed up to implement Common Criteria in the US. That's the logo on the right side. The left side, your left, the red logo is Common Criteria. In the center, NIAP stood up what they call the Common Criteria Evaluation and Validation Scheme. So that's the program that NIAP manages where we actually do the evaluation and oversight of commercial IT products. And I'll go more into that. And finally, the last symbol you see there is Common Criteria Recognition Arrangement, which I'll go just touch on when we talk about the international aspect of our job. So a little bit on our authorities. As you can see, it stems directly from National Security Directive 42. The one that I really want to highlight, does this work? Ah, but you can't see it. The one I really want to highlight, the second bullet, the Committee on National Security Policy number 11. It's a procurement policy, and it applies to all applies to all national security system users. And what it basically says is if you're going to buy any commercial IT product for use in your enterprise, they have to be NIAP certified. And from there, it trickles down to the CNSS Directive 502, which talks about a little bit about capability packages. And of course, you have the DoD instructions and directives. Okay, so what do? First and foremost, we evaluate COTS products. Lately, the U.S. government has been very dependent on the production of security products from the private sector. We are no longer looking at the bulk of our solutions becoming GOTS. There are still GOTS out there, but NIAP's focus is on the evaluation of commercial IT products. And I'll touch more on that. In order for these products to satisfy the needs of our community of users, we develop what we call protection profiles. And I'll go into a little bit more depth on that further into the discussion. And finally, because we use this commercial international standard, we are part of what we call the Common Criteria Recognition Arrangement. And I'm going to jump into this one first and go back to the last two bullets. So, the Common Criteria. Anyone know what that is? Basically, in a nutshell, back in the late 80s and 90s, everybody had their own set of criteria. The UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, Norway, France, and the US. Vendors were really hurting because they had to jump to every country and get the same product evaluated multiple times. So finally, the government listened, and 6 nations got together, US, UK, Norway, France, Germany, and Canada, and put together what they call the Common Criteria. What it basically is just a way of expressing IT product security requirements. You as either users or developers don't really have to understand the Common Criteria, but you have to understand how to implement it. Basically, all our security experts use this syntax so that everyone that recognizes the Common Criteria understands what we're saying. So when one country says, this is what we're doing for INA, Germany understands exactly what you're saying, and so does another country such as Singapore that's part of the CCRA. Physically, the Common Criteria is a 3-part collection of booklets. The first part is talks about the methodology of how to implement the Common Criteria. Part 2 talks about security functional requirements, and Part 3 talks about assurance requirements. the standards used in developing protection profiles, and we'll go a little bit more into that, and security targets, which is the complement of the protection profiles. And I'll explain that further as well. And finally, the standards used to evaluate products and systems against known and understood IT security requirements. So, right around the time that Common Criteria and the nations decided to implement this standard, Naiop worked with the U.S. Department to stand up what they call the Mutual Recognition Arrangement. When the 6 countries got together, they decided, okay, we need to have an agreement that, yes, we will recognize what you guys do in your nation, and you guys have to basically sign off on that as well. So from the 6 original nations, it is now 28. There are 28 nations out there that recognize this arrangement. Obviously, it eliminates the cost for costly security environments in more than one country. I kind of touched on that just earlier. And finally, for the vendor's perspective, are there any developers in the room? Vendors? Nope. So you guys can share this with your vendors, but getting a Common Criteria certification obviously opens up the global market to them, since they can sell to all 28 countries that recognize it. It gives you an example who the countries are. And if you see, if you recognize there's a grouping of nations on the left and a smaller grouping on the right, the grouping on the left indicates nations that have a NIAP similar type program. So all those nations also certify products. What that means is any of those countries can certify products from their nation, or they can certify products from any other nation. Any developer can go to any of those countries and say, I want to get tested and get a CC, Common Criteria certificate. The grouping on the right, they don't have a program like a NIAP, but they do recognize the arrangement. And so once these products are posted on an international product list, all these countries will look at that as a reference to purchasing the products for their use. So that's the national flavor, international flavor of NIAP. Is there any questions regarding that? So let's get into what we do. Stakeholder engagement. In order for us to do what we do, we engage with a large group of stakeholders. First and foremost, industry. We have to work with industry. I've been in NIAP. This is my second tour in NIAP. When I was the first in NIAP back in the early 2000s, NIAP and NIST and NSA developed documentation, the protection profiles, pretty much between themselves. They had the discussions of what the security threats were and what the requirements would be. When those documents in the past were posted, industry would look at it and go, you guys, what are you guys smoking? We can't do that. Technology isn't there yet. So today, we are engaged directly with industry in order to get the immediate and early buy-in into discussions of what can be accomplished today to meet requirements from our user community. User community, that's the rest of the bullets. You have the DoD and federal government groups, and primarily Committee on National Security Systems. That is our main customer. That doesn't mean that non-national security system users can't use our products. IC community, obviously, and NATO, the international flavor, they also recognize the Common Criteria. And again, the 25, how about that? I didn't update this slide. That should be 28. So there's 28 nations now. So the focus here is to get these products evaluated. Why do we want to do that? Well, obviously, now that we're kind of getting more dependency on COTS products, the community of users are looking at these lists of products by these vendors and have no clue whether it meets the requirements or not. This is almost like, I'm going to say consumer reports, right? So when we evaluate a product, that gives our community of users at least a grouping of products that have been evaluated and are suitable for use in national security systems, and that also meet the user community's requirements. And of course, again, products are evaluated against the NIAP protection profiles. What's our approach? Again, working with customers and end users. When we have our discussions with customers and users, number one, the users tell us what they want. Number two, the industry folks tell us what they can do. In addition to that, we also work with labs They tell us how they can test it, whether they have the tools to do it. And our approach today is to develop these protection profiles as quickly as possible to keep in step with technology and get them evaluated within 90 days. So if you've heard of NIAP in the past, the fact that we now can do an evaluation in 90 days is a major accomplishment to what NIAP used to be. It used to take 2 or 3 years. It used to take millions of dollars. It's now 90 days, and a lot of them are. The cost of getting a product evaluated is dependent on the complexity of the product, but it's no longer in the millions like it used to be. So part of our marketing strategy is to get out here and let you guys know, look, NIAP has improved, NIAP is faster, NIAP has to be adhered to because of CNSSP 11, and now we've opened it up to where anyone can participate in our process. So give you an idea of what the process is like. The COTS product comes in. Initially, a vendor will contact one of our commercial labs and negotiate a cost and schedule to get their product evaluated. They come in and claim that they can satisfy the requirements in a protection profile, and they produce a security target. These look very similar, with the exception that these have open assignments or selections, whereas the security target is specific on what the product can do. So this is implementation independent. This is implementation dependent. Okay? So once those are determined to be suitable for evaluation, it goes into the evaluation process, and NIAP provides the oversight of what the commercial labs do. So the labs will analyze, test, document, and report. NIAP validation will look through all the reports and all the test evidence and all the summaries to make sure it was executed properly. The outcome of that is a NIAP certificate, validation report, assurance activity report, admin guide, and a final security target. And this process gets that product posted on the NIAP PCL and the international certified product list.
How long is the process?
The entire process? So the goal is 90 days. The maximum is 180 days. So no product will stay in the process longer than 180 days. Not like, again, old NIAP, they would just languish. And that didn't help anybody, right? It helped the vendors because they could just let their product sit in evaluation status and still sell their product. But now that we've clamped down on that, if they don't finish in 180 days, they're kicked out. And they know that. And so, they try to get it done as quickly as possible. But 90 days has been accomplished. In fact, I think we had one that was finished in 67 days. But 90 is the target. So our protection profiles are technology specific. They emphasize security function requirements and objective test assurance activities, and they're developed with technical communities. So basically, when we stand up, or when we make a call that we're going to start writing a protection profile, it's technology specific. Right now, we have about 36 technologies that are covered. So if you look for, if you want to know what the requirements are for a firewall or an IDS or a biometric, you would look for that particular protection profile, and that's all posted on our public website. So if you have a need for a VPN solution, you could look at our PCL, product compliant list, to see what components you would use to develop a VPN solution. You would still need some integration and composing, but as far as the products that compose your solution, they will be on our product list. Open technical communities. This is a big deal now because this is where we get the biggest bang for the buck. We are, like I can't help emphasizing this enough, but we work directly with the vendors. We can spend as much as 4 to 6 months talking to vendors via telecom, via email, and discuss all the requirements that have to go into protection profile. So by the time the protection profile is finished, we've got almost immediate buy-in from the vendors that have participated, some of the user community, some of the testers, and in some cases, academia and other government agencies. So this is a big deal. And international partners participate as well. So what is protection profile? Was that the same thing as it? No. Sorry. This is a new set for me. Anyway, so again, protection profile. These are the components of protection profile. A set of technology-specific threats. They start with defining the threat environment for a given technology. And from there, they develop what they call security objectives, which then feeds into functional requirements. The functional requirements are straight out of the Common Criteria catalog. When you look at those functional requirements, they fall into categories as security management, INA, or access control, or trusted path requirements, or even crypto services. So those are mapped to the threats that we're concerned with for this particular technology. And finally, assurance activities, the actual test that a lab has to do to make sure these functional requirements perform as defined. Today, assurance activities are now specific to a given requirement. So if you, just to keep it simple, if you have a requirement for a 16-word password, the test will actually tell the evaluator, plug in a 12-character password, plug in an 18-character password, and it should fail. And it should pass, obviously, with 16. But that's how detailed the assurance activities now. So there's no question that the expected result is achieved, and no matter which lab does it, the results are consistent. Any questions yet? Nope. Okay. Technical community, government, industry, academia. These are the guys that help us out. I mean, NIAP is not a very big office. And so we rely on a lot of the expertise that now resides in the private sector, other agencies, other groups within the agencies, as well as academia. So when we have a need defined or dictated by a customer, let's just say a customer comes up to us and says, my commander wants to use a laptop on the battlefield. So our experts will look at what kind of threats that brings into the scenario. And we talk to government, industry, and academia, and we start talking about, okay, how do we protect this? What do we need for access control? How do we protect communications from that laptop? What about physical security, et cetera, et cetera? We cover everything in the protection profile so that once the guidelines are put out, then not only the development of the product comes into play, but also the implementation. Importance of participating. Well, obviously we want to see more industry participation. We have a good number of participants now. A lot of the big vendors already participate, and the importance of participating is to continue developing a consistent set of technology-specific security requirements with associated assurance activities. Collaborative PP development, that's the international flavor of protection profiles. So the importance of participating also allows you to have discussions with our international partners who may have a different set of requirements that may require a different set of SFRs and assurance requirements. And again, the marketing benefits of the Common Criteria evaluation. Okay? So where is Naiop today? We currently have 24 technical communities, and I have a list of those technology areas. Five also additional international TCs. These technical communities are stood up for the development of protection profiles, but they don't go away after that. We have a key set of members within these TCs that are on the hook for maintaining and updating our existing set of protection profiles. We currently have 36 technology-based protection profiles, all available on our website, and our product compliant list has over 800 evaluated product configurations available for NSS procurement. Again, 90 days. We want to hammer that down because we've got to get rid of this myth that Naiop takes too long and costs too much. This is one of our shining stars here, mobile devices, specifically the Samsung device. We were directly involved with the development cycle of Samsung, and they started submitting their evidence for a Naiop evaluation. By the time the device actually by the time that product was actually reached the commercial market, the certificate went up on the NIAP. So that was definitely the ideal arrangement of how we'd like to see things happen with other products. Yep, so we have over 200 vendors participating in development of protection profiles. TCs, technical communities. These are the areas that we cover. If anybody can join these TCs, all you have to do is go to our website and say, hey, I want to learn more about data at rest. And what that means is we put you on the email list for data at rest information. You get the latest drafts. You can participate in the telecons at your, whenever you feel like it. You don't have to say anything on the call. Just listen in. But we want to give you that opportunity. So in case there is something that comes up in your mind and you want to weigh in, this is the time to do it. Because we don't want to put something out there and somebody all of a sudden says, well, what about this? And everybody else at TC says, oh, we didn't think about that. So, you know, it didn't make it to this version. But this is the list. And these are all active. These are all currently active. And for international, these are technologies covered by international TCs. Ultimately, this list will grow. But NIAP, obviously, we're trying to push as many technology areas as we can so that we can get more products on our PCL. Just a snapshot of our published PPs. You can see that the latest version is up there. The CPP indicates international. You have an approval date, and you have a sunset date. I don't show on here, but what this means is when a new version of a protection profile comes out, we put a sunset date for the version that's being superseded. That gives vendors an opportunity of at least 6 months to get their products in against that profile that ultimately would be archived. And once that 6-month period is over, that version of the protection profile goes away, and everyone then will have to go against the newest version. Now, that's a short list, but it says 36 validated protection profiles. And that's publicly available. You guys can download these, read them, see what they're all about. You don't have to read the whole thing. Like I said, Common Criteria is Greek, even sometimes to me, when I look at the latest versions of the protection profiles. But the front matter tells you what these things are trying to address. The front matter will tell you whether it's applicable to you or not. Those are all in plain English. Oh, so just to give you an idea of how the whole ecosystem works, you put the customer needs and industry capabilities together, put up a technical community, have that discussion to produce a protection profile. That protection profile serves as the target for the common criteria evaluation. And once the product is certified, the customer gets to use them. So what does an NIAP evaluation get us? So vendors will tell you anything, unfortunately. This is one thing that they can't tell you. They can't tell you what parts you guys can use if it hasn't been certified by us. We confirm the functionality of any product for that given technology. In other words, whatever the vendor claims their product does, we go in and test it and say, okay, yes, you do, or else, no, you can't market that piece. And we'll let our user community know that, hey, product X meets ABC, and although they claim DEF, it's not authorized for use. We got an extra feed there. But ultimately, the decision to use a product and its uncertified functionality is up to the system owner. Ultimately, if it has to meet a mission objective, then they can make that decision. They have to do that additional risk assessment. Again, comparing products by technology. Yeah, we've got Cisco's and Junipers up against each other right there. Again, it adds assurance to overall network security posture. Baseline security requirements raises the bar. So baseline security requirements, this is based on technology again. It's not a preset baseline of requirements for all technologies. When we look at a specific technology, we decide, or the TC decides, what's the appropriate functionality that would define that particular technology. So, for a firewall, the firewall protection profile will list all the basic security functionality that defines a firewall, or that should be present in a firewall. So whether you've got the filtering aspect, the access controls, et cetera, et cetera. And again, raises the bar. Yeah, you'll see something later on that. One of the closing quotes from our users. So here's something from one of our technical directors from the DoD Information Assurance Group. One thing that they appreciate now is the fact that we look carefully at crypto requirements. It takes away the hard work for people to decide, okay, what's the appropriate key size for this type of crypto service, or what's the appropriate protocol that I can use from point A to point B. We do all that work for them, and it's in the protection profile. And so that one of our technical directors finds value in that. From the vendor perspective, it raises the bar. It helps them improve their product. When they see what our requirements are talking about, and it just shows them where their shortfalls are. And of course, when they participate in the TC, the discussion involves the vendors, and the vendors have the discussions, and they agree that, yeah, that is something that our products can do, or they'll decide, no, that's one that they can do, but we can't do. And we'll make a decision whether to put that requirement in the main body of the protection profile or put it in a section that we call objective requirements, which means vendors can still go against a profile. The guy with the additional functionality can opt to claim the other objective requirements and basically get kind of a one-up on his competitor, depending on what that additional functionality is. So from a Microsoft Test Manager, timing. The whole thing about us streamlining our entire process makes it quicker to get timely product independent third-party certifications to the customer. I think that's all I got. Contact information. Visit our website. And if you guys have any questions about whether a product is available for procurement by NSS, then by all means contact us. When I said that our products provide a baseline level of functionality, what happens out in the field is there are other programs out there that actually augment the requirements in the protection profile. There are programs out there with other agencies, and we do engage with the other agencies like DHS, DISA, the JITC, DISA's JITC, and NIST for the crypto and CMVP and CAVP, which is the crypto module and crypto algorithm validation programs. With regard to DISA, we work with them to develop what we call DoD annexes, which are appended to our protection profiles, and those address the requirements that DISA is most concerned about with regards to interoperability or any additional cybersecurity requirements that are in their SRGs. And that's in that DoD annex. And if you look at the DISA APL process, I think it came out 3 years ago. Appendix G specifically says anything coming into the APL has to be Naiop certified. So that's the kind of progress we're making as far as harmonization between the agencies and making sure that we're helping the vendors understand what it means to get a Naiop certification or getting on the DISA APL, and it helps our users by at least recognizing that a Naiop certification goes a long way. It's not just a product certification. It actually feeds into the DISA APL, it actually feeds into certification and accreditation processes, and it feeds into the national market. So DISA has, NIAP has primarily been in the background with regard to the overall picture of solutions, but if you really think about it, all the solutions out there are made up with these components, and that's what we do. We evaluate the components. So, any questions? Oh man, that was quick. Did I talk fast? It looks like you're trying to come up with a question. Go for it.
It's been a long time since I looked at your site. Probably the arcade days when it took
Yeah.
years and
Yeah.
new products coming out and it's on there.
So
It's
there,
never in there. It seems like it's like 3 versions behind in the operating system years ago.
yeah, that was years ago. That's right.
So I guess the question is, when flaws come into products that are hardware level, like the God bit that we all found out about in some of our processors and stuff recently, do you decertify them pretty quick, or is it still certified because it met the checklist? Do you take stuff off of decertified?
Okay.
I can't get the question out.
No, I got you. So.
Drop it on the ground.
So when a product gets certified and is posted on our PCL, they stay on the PCL for at least 2 years. After 2 years, they can come back in what we call our assurance maintenance process. That means if any changes that have occurred, any patches, whatever the case is, has occurred since the last evaluation, that product can be resubmitted, and impact analysis report is conducted to see what significance the changes have on the overall security profile. And if it's not significant, then more than likely it'll get recertified. If it is a significant change, it might have to come in for additional testing. And if they successfully complete the assurance maintenance, they're given another 12 months. So the longest period is 36 months. Now that's the general rule of thumb. In other technologies like mobile phones, they turn on so quickly. So a mobile phone that's on our PCL may get pushed out a lot earlier because the vendor, the industry is pushing them out a lot quicker than what our policy defines in here. So there's one thing I didn't mention, and I do want to bring this up because it's still out there, unfortunately. One of the things that still exists in procurement documentation, acquisition documentation, is the term EAL. NIAP no longer does EALs. So if you as a customer are trying to be compliant with your local organizational policy, and that policy or acquisition policy says you will use an EAL2 or EAL4 product, have them call us. And we'll tell them that that's no longer the practice. Yeah, we've come across that constantly, and even the vendors tell us I need an EAL. The vendors come to us and say I'm going to Canada because I need an EAL evaluation. So why? Because the customer's asking for it. What customer? And so we'll have that discussion, and we'll call the customer, and the customer will go, oh well, it was just in the documentation. Yeah, I know. It's in the documentation. And we have to make those changes from the top. But once that trickles down, once the policy trickles down and we eradicate the use of EALs, then everything will be a little clearer than it is now. It's a little confusing to our community, our user community now. Yep.
So it's either certified or not certified?
Again, what's that?
It's either certified or not certified.
That's right.
The old days used 3, 4.
Right. So when we say it's certified, it's compliant with the protection profile. So the protection profiles dictate what the evaluation should be based on. Well, just to give you a sense of what the EAL is, those were predetermined packages from EAL 1 to 7. And what was happening in the past was we were getting a lot of subjective results from the different labs, different interpretations. And it wasn't helping us, and it was confusing the customer even more. The statement that what they call the security assurance requirements were stated in such a general level that the labs could just say, well, I'll just give you this, and that satisfies that. And that was creating a headache for our validators because they had to review everything to make sure it was clear that they satisfied the protection profile requirements. And they had their understanding of what the assurance requirements were. And so we still had that. Now, with the objective assurance activities that we have, it's clear what the evaluator has to do, it's clear what the documentation has to cover, and it's clear what the results should be. And there's no question. There's still some difficulty in some of the more complex technologies, but then those get ironed out as more evaluations come into play. Okay? Well, thanks again. What's today, Tuesday? Yeah. I just got here yesterday, so I'm still a little behind. And that's it. Thanks for coming.